I'm Mike, owner of the In Groove in Phoenix, Arizona. Today I'm going to do a review of the new LP of Pink Floyd's Live at Pompeii. It has been a very, very long time since I've waited for an album as much as I've waited for this one. So much so that every couple of days, every 3 or 4 days, I would go on to iTunes Music to see if they dropped another track from the album so I could preview it. Up to this point of me actually having the record, they did One of These Days and Echoes Part 1. Those two tracks were previewed, but until I actually had this album in my hand, I'd go in, I would check every couple of days, see if it came out, be disappointed, and then re-listen to Echoes for the 17th time. It's been kind of a fun couple of months. Kind of reminds me of my childhood. Normally nowadays, being in the business, I don't anticipate and I don't wait for things as much as I used to. Okay, so unique because this has never officially been out on vinyl. This album has been bootlegged a gazillion times. There's been official releases of the album in various digital medias, but never on vinyl before. Never officially released on vinyl. What's nice about this particular version, it is completely new, remixed, and remastered audio. So Steven Wilson went back to the original 4-track, mono 4-track. Apparently this album was recorded, each instrument as a mono mic feed. So one feed for keyboard, for drums, that type of thing. I tried to research and find as much information on the process of this as possible because I was truly interested. I seen this in the theater a couple of weeks ago. Not a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, and it was awesome. The film is definitely dated, by today's standards. It's a little wandery. The way the film originally came out was nothing more than the concert. And by concert, I mean they went to Pompeii and they played in the ruins of Pompeii to nobody. But the original release of the film was about an hour long, and that's what it was. Shortly after that, they went back and they added some stuff from the album they were working on at the time, which just so happened to be Dark Side of the Moon. It's a cool movie in the sense that it kind of shows you the transition from metal to this psych band, this space prog rock band. Space rock, weird name, but kind of a name that was given to them. This prog rock psychedelic band of the 60s and early 70s to what they would become when Dark Side of the Moon came out. When Dark Side of the Moon came out, it changed the band forever. The 4 albums that preceded those, Dark Side of the Moon, the 3 albums that preceded it, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall, are absolute iconic masterpieces from front to back. But it started with Dark Side of the Moon, and you kind of see them do the performances at Pompeii, go into the studio, start working on Dark Side of the Moon, and the rest is history. Dark Side of the Moon to this day is probably still one of the top 3 albums sales-wise for me. If I were to go back the last 10 years, if I had a way to add up, which I don't, but if I had a way to go back and add up all the different sales throughout the years, I would say Dark Side of the Moon is probably, if not the best-selling title, maybe the top 3. It's up there with Rumors, Kinda Blue, and outside the realm of what you would expect, Lana Del Rey's Born to Die. Those albums on vinyl sell like gangbusters. And when you think that Dark Side of the Moon sells like gangbusters some odd 50 years later, it's insane. But the film is great because it captures that transition for the band. Not only that, it was recently restored. They scanned the original negative, I guess, of the film. They found the original negative of the film. They scanned that to 4K. You don't typically see Pink Floyd footage. There wasn't a band that was really well recorded. Not only concert footage, but just early footage of them performing in general. There's not a ton of it out there. Not like a lot of other bands. There's some bands that you could just find endless amounts of footage. Pink Floyd is not one of them. So to see this in that quality and listen to this music in spectacular quality as well. And I'll get to the review and the talk about this album in a second. But to see the quality of the film and the quality of the audio was absolutely spectacular. Steve Wilson did a phenomenal job remixing this, and he remixed it in a fashion that kind of was very befitting of the performance. It's not, it kind of almost sounds like a studio record, which it kind of should, because this album was not recorded in a live concert setting. There's not thousands of cheering fans. It's not recorded indoors, so you get echo and reverb. None of that should be present. And it's not. It kind of has a very dry sound to it, but it's fitting of them performing to a crowd of nobody in this ancient amphitheater. I mean, it kind of has that vibe, and the sonics of this thing are absolutely fantastic. And I will say I streamed it, the tracks that are available, and I listened to it on vinyl. There are some factors I can't accommodate for. I might have a much higher end analog rig than I do a digital rig, although the digital stuff I played it on was, not cheap gear by any stretch. I liked sonically the vinyl. I think there is a little bit more harshness. I noticed it at the theater when I watched it in IMAX, and I noticed it on the stream. There is a little bit more harshness and brassiness to the album, mainly because of the way Nick Mason's drums are mic'd. They're mic'd in a fashion to where you're getting a lot of overheads, cymbal overhead sound. And I think it's a little tamer on the vinyl. Now, that could just be, like I said, a combination of my preamp. It could be a combination of my cartridge. But for me, the vinyl was a much, much better, more pleasurable listening experience. Let me show it to you guys. Pull the shrink off. So here we have the album. New artwork. Well, I mean, new compared to it never officially having artwork. Beautiful photographs on the inside. Look at it. Oh, what an album. And I'll show you guys the inside. Look at all that beautiful equipment. Who was it that did? The Beastie Boys did a song. I remember when I was a kid watching a music video of them performing and kind of spoofing or paying homage to Pompeii. That just reminded me of it there as well. What a blast I had watching the movie. It was spectacular fun. Okay, so that's it. You got the two printed inners, and then you have the poster. I mean, what would a Pink Floyd record be without a poster? I mean, you got to think 50 years from now, when this is for sale at a record store, people are going to be digging, be like, oh, does it have the original poster? But actually, and this is nice because it is a proper poster. So many times do you see them advertising a poster and then you get it out and it's like a letter-sized sheet of paper made on a color copier. And you're like, what is this? This is a joke. Let me show you the discs. Miles, Abbey Road, Half Speed, Room 30. Disc 1, maybe? What is that? Flip over. So that's disc 2. This is disc 1. Two separate images and two different color labels on the flip side. The record sonically was flawless. Very, very quiet, very good pressing. It is stored, unfortunately, in this paper sleeve. So there's a little bit of that surface scuffing on it. I mean, unfortunately, it's there. But fortunately, it didn't, that's the paper sleeve. So you're going to have, it has a little bit of surface scuffing. It's not an audio, it's not a Fidelity or QRP or RTI press record. But nonetheless, it played really, really quiet, played really, really well. I will say the album, I think, is cut a little bit low. It's cut a little bit soft. It's not really cut loud by any stretch. And I had to turn it up to a level that I don't think I've done in a long time at the showroom, when I was listening to it earlier today at the store. So it's cut a little bit low, but sonically it's fantastic. I only have bootleg audio. There's audio from the early years box set I have. Videos I've seen on YouTube, clips of that nature from previous DVD releases, VHS, Laserdisc, however these clips came to YouTube. But sonically, this is far more superior than anything I ever heard. It has a great sound. It has a modern sound without being a modern sounding record. I know that's a little, kind of almost sounds like an oxymoron, but it has the freshness and cleanness of a band that could have went into the studio recently and recorded this. It has that level of fantastic sonic quality. When I say modern, that's kind of what I'm referring to, but it also doesn't have the drawbacks of modern records. It's not overly loud and compressed. I mean, there's a ton of dynamic range, which suits this record so much. Echoes is not the same track if you smush the music and compress it to where everything is just loud. These early Pink Floyd, these episodic albums, have a natural build to them, and it kind of suits the artist's intention, I think, to just kind of let it open up and let it breathe, and the compression, I think, would kill it. But it's episodic in the sense that it's soft, it's quiet. It starts off, the intro to this, with the Dark Side of the Moon heartbeat. That starts off Dark Side of the Moon. So it starts off with that nice and mellow drum kick, the Nick Mason drum beat, the heartbeat. It starts off in that fashion, and then it just kind of builds up slowly through echoes. And then it leads into stuff like Saucer Full of Secrets, and kind of the beginning of that, which is kind of an avant-garde rock piece to where they're just yelling and screaming and they're just going nuts. But it builds and it ebbs and flows, and the fact that it's not compressed and smushed, it just makes this album so much more listenable and enjoyable. I was not disappointed in this at the least. And if you are not a Pink Floyd fan, shame on you. But if you're not, get this album. You might find it enjoyable. It's a shame that this era of Pink Floyd is not as loved as I think it should be. The main era for Pink Floyd, of course, are the 4 albums I mentioned earlier. That is 90% of all the Pink Floyd records I sell. Maybe 95%. Maybe 99%. It is by far and away the bulk. I sell more copies of Dark Side of the Moon, 10 times more copies of Dark Side of the Moon than any album pre Dark Side of the Moon. Metal. I mean, it's just not even close. But they made such great and wonderful music in the early years, and I wish more of that was out there to the masses. But if you want a good taste of early Pink Floyd, this is it. And I highly recommend this because it is fantastic. It is the full package altogether. Now, I'm also going to get the the Blu-ray. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it because I don't have really a Blu-ray player. Actually, I have an Oppo. I'm going to work something out to where I can watch that at home. I want to see it. One of the cool things about the Blu-ray, if you get the Blu-ray, is they have the original theatrical cut, but they also have just the concert. So you'll be able to get just the concert. Now, keep in mind, too, I don't think a lot of people realize not everything you see on this is actually from Pompeii. The filmmakers did a little bit of trickery when it came to recording this. And you'll notice by the fact Nick Mason has a beard in some cuts and some cuts he doesn't. But, more facial hair. But a bulk of it got shot in Pompeii. You have the obvious studio stuff, the Abbey Road studio stuff, Dark Side of the Moon. There's some stuff of them hanging out in Canteen talking about, they want pie and more milk, that kind of, there's that lighthearted stuff. But there's also some cut-ins, and there's some stuff that I believe was filmed in Paris. So the Blu-ray film itself, I believe, is just the Pompeii concert footage, not the Paris tracks. Like the Paris tracks are Mademoiselle Knobs, and then partial, what else? Clips of other stuff. But I want to say echoes, both echoes, saucers, set to controls for the, maybe not, Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure. But if you're watching the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's dark, but you can clearly see like this isn't the same thing as Pompeii. There's like wood planks on the floor, that kind of thing. Not the dirt that they were performing this in Pompeii. So I highly recommend this. And I recommend you checking out the film. And if you get the Blu-ray audio, you'll be able to get the film and just the concert as well. If you've got a way to play it, I think it's not something you'll listen to and buy once. It's, as a film, or as the concert, I feel like something you you get your money's worth. You'll just listen to it over and over and over again. One of the other things I found so cool was David Gilmour recently sold off most of his guitars, including the Stratocaster that was used on Dark Side of the Moon, and also is prominently featured in this film. But one of the things, I think it sold for like $4 million. Maybe the most expensive guitar ever sold for. There might be something I'm missing, but it's up there with the top most expensive guitars ever sold. And it should be. But one of the things that was so cool was watching him do Saucer Full of Secrets in the dirt, playing around with his pedals, and just that Fender is in the dirt and he's just playing it and there's dirt flying everywhere. And I just, with hindsight, looking back on that, all these years later, thinking to myself, boy, that guitar just sold for $4 million. What an experience. The album has been a pleasure. I'm glad I got to show it to you. I don't know how many of you guys stuck around here for me to yammer on about this, but highly recommend it. I don't want to freak anybody out. I think there'll be plenty of these things, but I sold it really well in pre-order, and I went to get some more copies, and there might be a couple. I'm not saying it's going to be hard to get or anything. I don't want to give that a sense, but I think it's going to hit harder than people are anticipating. I think there's going to be a lot more demand for this than there's going to be inventory at the store level for the first week or two, but I think that'll catch up and everybody will be able to get their hands on this. I don't think this is going to be something they keep rare or anything by that stretch of the imagination, but I've noticed pre-orders and demand for this is gone crazy the last week, and I don't think a lot of stores and a lot of retailers are prepared for that. So yeah, if you don't get it right away, I think it's going to be something that you'll easily be able to get in the next week or two. All right, guys, I still have copies for now of the Blu-ray and the album at theingroove.com, guys. Until next time.